Unlike the United States and most other countries, we in Britain have an uncodified constitution, which means many fundamental rules are often customs, precedents, and a variety of other legal instruments. In other words, it is unwritten. Nothing is concrete. And critics say it can sometimes be a mess. Barrister Austin Morgan has a book coming out called Pretense, where he argues we need a written constitution. And Austin joins me now. Welcome to the show. So, Austin, I want to start by talking a little bit about Brexit, because I think during the whole Brexit affair, when you had John Bercow in the House of Commons and people were suggesting that what we had here was an activist speaker who was interpreting the Constitution in the way that he wanted it to be rather than how it was, people have started to realise that there are flaws in not having the thing written down. To what extent was that the case?
Well, it was Brexit that led me to think about the problem and to write the book, which I did during the lockdown. But I was not an advocate of a written constitution before 2016. Since then, it's Theresa May and Boris Johnson who've been blamed for not calling a second referendum. That's the predominant view. The other view, my view, is Parliament got some things badly wrong. It never unseated the government, even though it lost confidence. And I'm ashamed to say the judges got something wrong, the second Miller case on the prorogation of Parliament.
So this is a problem, isn't it? Because the judges have to interpret this sort of nebulous constitution that's in the air based on precedents going back many, many years. It's bound to be open to different interpretations, right?
Look, there are people, usually in universities, who talk about the old constitution.
Yes. You
ask them, what does it say? They say it's got the answers to every problem. And we are the ones who are going to give you the answers.
Yes. So to play devil's advocate, what are the advantages of having an unwritten constitution?
Well, you might be able to get some legitimate... the unwritten constitution, well, the advantages are this state is nearly 1,000 years old. It's never been invaded successfully.
Yes.
It lost a bit of Ireland 100 years ago, but England and later the United Kingdom has had secure borders for almost a millennium. They say to me, look, we've got on very well for 1,000 years without a constitution. I say it's looking pretty ragged, and Brexit rather put the constitution under challenge.
Now, people before have attempted to draft versions of a constitution. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
There are three. 1991, the Institute for Public Policy Research, a left-of-centre think tank, actually said, we're not going to talk about it, we're going to draft it. Excellent document. Secondly, Vernon Bogdaner, and he is the leading historian arguing for a written constitution, his students at Oxford drafted the actual constitution as we are, and that's when you see what a weird system of governance we do have. And then finally, under David Cameron and Nick Clegg, there was a committee in the Commons which again was very inspired by David Cameron and the anniversary of Magna Carta, and they got some academic lawyers in and they drafted a constitution. So there are three existing texts, and standing one on the other, there's quite a lot of work that's already been done, and I'm simply arguing that an official body, a commission, should advise a government, any government, on the basis of that work.
So we could use that work, in other words, to develop a constitution from, and we could have all those debates and discussions. What kind of, I mean, I'm particularly interested, as you know, probably in free speech. You know, in America, the reason why free speech is at the moment in a better condition is because they have a written constitution, which includes the First Amendment. And although some activists are trying to get the amendment amended so that it doesn't apply to certain forms of speech, on the whole, it's pretty robust. We don't have that, and that's why we've ended up with hate speech.
Well, I'm with you on free speech, because without free speech, I can't do my job of helping my clients.
Yeah.
I'm a supporter of a UK Bill of Rights as a stage 2 human rights reform. I think everybody should be given a set of rights, pretty much like the Bill of Rights in the UK Constitution. That is not what we have at the moment, and the Strasbourg system from the Council of Europe suffers from great deformations.
Yes.
Basically, we have 46 academic activist judges in Strasbourg who do not know our justice system. The British judges have already told Strasbourg to back off on a number of occasions. It is an unhappy situation. But what is wrong with our democracy? Why can't we give ourselves a set of rights and then maybe more people would respect human rights?
And of course, many people would say that, well, Brexit is the perfect opportunity, the perfect moment, actually, to draw up a written constitution so that we can draw away. I mean, I know the court in Strasbourg predates the EU, but to draw away from these institutions in Europe.
Andrew, a very good point. European law was our fundamental law for 50 years. Yes. European law has now been withdrawn. Why can't we put in UK fundamental law? The Supreme Court would interpret it, but the Constitution would limit what the Supreme Court does as well as give it powers. Ditto with the executive branch of government, ditto with Parliament.
It sounds quite radical when you talk about a written constitution, but it's not really, because it's been mooted in one way or another in the current government's last manifesto, wasn't it?
Well, it was in the Tories' 2019 manifesto. They were going to have a commission on rights and the constitution. They didn't do anything.
Well, they weren't committing to a written constitution, but they were...
No, they weren't committing to it, but they were committing to a commission which at least would have begun the work.
Yes.
They didn't even go there. There was, I'm afraid, political skullduggery.
Well, there was a pandemic as well, which probably derailed them.
There was a pandemic which dislocated the Johnson government considerably.
Yes.
But the skullduggery had actually taken place before coronavirus came over from China.
So you think even though it had become in the, it was in the manifesto, there were some people who were opposed to this commission?
Yes.
And they were pretty powerful, clearly.
And they're called conservatives.
Right. But why? Why are these conservatives so against this idea?
I go back to my point that there are some people who think they know what the Constitution is, all the answers are very clear, and if you just ask them, you'll get the answer.
Yeah, but clearly there's so much disagreement.
They're protecting a secret.
Right, I see. But we've seen for ourselves how people are interpreting the Constitution in different ways. So that's clearly not the case. And this would just be a way to...
Well, the people who mainly invent the Constitution is the Cabinet Secretary, usually at the time of general elections.
Yes.
If we go back to 2010, Gordon Brown lost the election, but he tried to do a coalition agreement with the Lib Dems. David Cameron was doing the same thing. The Cabinet Secretary decided he was going for one coalition and not the other. So he wrote a bit of the Constitution and handed it up to Gordon Brown and said, I now have a role to play.
Yes.
The key thing about our Constitution is it's made up of two key people, the head of state and the Prime Minister. But the third side of the triangle is the Cabinet Secretary.
Yes.
And at crucial moments, like a change of government, the Cabinet Secretary steps in, takes over,
yes,
and imposes a solution.
But it would be quite radical to draw up a constitution, because it would mean, for instance, the withdrawal of the Church of England from the House.
Well, my favourite subject is the head of state. Charles wants to be defender of faith. All he has to do is ask Parliament for that title. They'll take the off the existing title. They'll enact a statute, and he will be defender of faith. But how can he be head of the Church of England?
Yes.
How can the Church of England be the official church in England? When Charles goes north to Scotland, not to kill furry little animals, he changes his religion from one bit of Protestantism to another bit of Protestantism. Now, we know religion is a serious matter, and you don't change your religion when you go on holiday. But that's what's been happening for time immemorial.
Well, Austin, we don't have much time left, but I want to ask just quickly about your book. So the book is called Pretense. What's the full title, sorry?
Pretense, Why the United Kingdom Needs a Written Constitution.
Yes.
It has a beautiful portrait of Charles I on the front. I chose that long before the death of the late Queen, but it was in mind that we might have a successor in Charles III. They, of course, are different dynasties. Charles I was a Stuart. Charles III is a German who's been anglicised as a Windsor.
Yes. So, but how confident are you that this book will start this sort of movement that you want to see?
Well, I'm not a political activist, and I'm certainly not a politician. I'm only a legal advisor. But I do know the legal advisors who have trod this path before. But with government patronage from whichever party forms the next government, then we might be on a road again.
Well, at the very least, we could have a conversation about it, couldn't we? That would be a start.
Well, as long as we've got freedom of speech, yes, we can.
Exactly. Austin, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it.